Caleb Hartwell dropped to his knees in the snow. The boy couldn't have been more than 10. His small body was curled around 2 wooden crates, shielding them from the killing wind. His lips were blue. His fingers had frozen to the rope he'd been pulling. "They murdered my mama and papa," the boy whispered through cracked lips, "for what's buried under our land." Then his eyes rolled back, and he went still. Behind him, 2 babies whimpered in those crates. Barely alive, barely breathing. If you want to know what Caleb did next, subscribe to my channel and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Montana Territory, January 1887. Caleb Hartwell heard the screaming before he saw the boy. He'd been breaking ice on the water trough same as every morning for 9 years. The iron bar came down hard, shattering the frozen surface. Black water welled up beneath. The cattle pushed forward, desperate to drink. Then that sound cut through the wind, high and thin. A child's voice calling for help. Caleb dropped the bar. His boots crunched through the snow as he ran toward the main gate. The cold burned his lungs. His breath came out in white clouds that the wind tore away. The boy was already falling when Caleb reached him. "Easy, son." Caleb caught him before he hit the ground. "I got you." The child weighed nothing. His coat was too thin, his boots cracked and stuffed with newspaper. Frostbite had turned his ears white at the edges, but his eyes, those eyes were old. Too old for a face that young. "Behind me," the boy rasped. "My brother and sister. Please." Caleb looked past him and felt his stomach drop. A makeshift travois lay in the snow. 2 fence poles lashed together with rope burlap stretched between them. And on that burlap, 2 wooden apple crates lined with torn blankets. Inside each crate, a baby. "Lord Almighty!" Caleb set the boy down gently and moved to the crates. The twins couldn't have been more than 18 months old. A girl with wispy blonde hair. A boy with darker coloring. Their skin had that terrible grayish tinge he'd seen on cattle left out too long in Montana winters. They were breathing. Barely. "How far did you carry them?" Caleb asked. 3 days. The boy's voice was a whisper. "Maybe 4. Lost count." 3 days. In this cold. Pulling 2 babies on a sled he'd built himself. Caleb gathered the boy in his arms and hooked the travois rope over his shoulder. He moved fast toward the cabin, his long legs eating up the distance. The wind howled at his back like it was angry he'd found them. Inside, the fire had burned down to embers. Caleb kicked the door shut and laid the children on the bearskin rug near the hearth. He threw logs on the fire, opened the flue wide. Flames caught and roared to life. "Stay with me, son." He stripped the frozen clothes off the twins first, their little garments cracked like paper. He wrapped each baby in wool blankets from his own bed, rubbing their chests in small circles. The girl whimpered. Then the boy. Caleb's hands started shaking. He lifted the baby boy closer to the warmth, and for one terrible moment, he wasn't holding a stranger's child. He was holding Sarah. His Sarah. 18 months old. The same weight. The same size. The medicine bottle in his hand. The dosage he'd measured wrong because he hadn't slept in 3 days. His wife's screaming. The tiny coffin. Caleb forced the memory down. Forced his hands steady. He boiled milk, tested it on his wrist, dipped clean cloths for the babies to suck. Their mouths worked weakly, but they worked. The older boy was still conscious, watching from the rug. His eyes tracked Caleb's every movement. "What's your name, son?" "Tobias Dawson." The boy's voice cracked. "Toby. Where are your folks, Toby?" The boy went still. That careful stillness Caleb recognized from courtrooms, from witnesses hiding something vital. "Dead, sir. 3 weeks back. The wagon accident on Miller's Pass." Toby's jaw tightened. "Wasn't no accident." Caleb stopped, set down the milk cloth, turned to face the boy fully. "What did you say?" I said it wasn't no accident. Toby's old eyes met his. They killed my mama and papa, burned our wagon with them inside, because of what's under our land. Who killed them? Man named Blackwood, Marcus Blackwood. The name hit Caleb like a fist to the chest. He knew that name. Everyone in Montana Territory knew that name. Marcus Blackwood was the railroad's top attorney, the man who'd acquired more land for the Western Montana Railroad than anyone in the territory's history, legal or otherwise. You sure about that, son? I saw him. Toby's voice shook, but it didn't waver. The night they died, I saw him standing by a tree 40 yards from the road. He threw something, a bottle with fire inside. It hit our wagon wheel. And then, Mama pushed me into the bushes, told me to hide, told me to get Grace and Henry and run. The boy's face crumpled, but he fought it back. I wanted to help her, but she said, easy. Caleb moved closer, knelt beside him. You don't have to say it all now. She said, find Caleb Hartwell. Toby looked up at him. Said you were the only honest man in the territory. Said you'd help us because you owed my pa a debt. Caleb went cold. Your pa was Michael Dawson. Yes, sir. Michael Dawson. The small rancher from the mining claim case. Denver, 1879. Caleb had helped him fight off Blackhawk Mining when they tried to steal his land through a legal technicality. It had cost Caleb his job at the firm, cost him his career in Chicago. He'd thought it was ancient history, forgotten. I remember your father, Caleb said quietly. He was a good man. He said the same about you. The fire crackled. The twins made soft sounds in their sleep. Outside, the wind screamed across the frozen valley. Toby. Caleb kept his voice steady. I need to look at your boots. The boy's face went white. He pulled his feet back, wrapped his arms around his knees. No, sir. Can't take them off. Son, your feet are frostbit. You could lose your toes. Please. The word came out desperate. Please don't. Caleb studied him. The thin face, the hollow cheeks, the fear that went deeper than frostbite. What's in those boots, Toby? The boy was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he reached down and worked the laces loose. His fingers were clumsy, the skin cracked and bleeding. The left boot came off first. Inside, stuffed against his ankle, was a folded piece of paper. It's a map, Toby said. My pa drew it. Shows where the gold is. Gold, under our ranch. A big vein. Pa said it was worth millions. The boy handed over the paper. His hands trembled. That's why they killed him. The railroad wants to run a spur line to the mine, but Pa wouldn't sell. Caleb unfolded the map, crude but detailed. The Dawson Ranch boundary, the North Ridge, an X marked in red ink. Your pa showed you this night before they killed him. Said if anything happened, I should take it to you. Toby's voice broke. Said you'd know what to do. The fire popped. A log shifted, sending sparks up the chimney. Caleb looked at the 3 children in his cabin. The boy who'd dragged his siblings through a blizzard. The twins sleeping by the fire. All of them orphans now because a railroad attorney wanted their land. He folded the map carefully, put it in his pocket. You're safe here, Toby, all 3 of you. For how long? For as long as it takes. The sound of wagon wheels came at noon the next day. Caleb had been watching for it. He'd barely slept, keeping the fire-stoked, warming milk for the twins, checking Toby's feet for signs of gangrene. The boy's toes were damaged, but salvageable. Small mercies. He stepped onto the porch as the wagon rolled up the long drive. Sheriff Jonas Webb sat in the driver's seat, his face apologetic. And beside him, wrapped in a black wool coat that probably cost more than most men made in a year, sat Marcus Blackwood. Caleb's hand drifted toward the rifle by the door. Morning, Caleb. The sheriff climbed down first. His eyes wouldn't meet Caleb's. Heard you had some visitors. I did. Blackwood descended from the wagon like a man stepping into his own parlor. His boots were polished. His face was smooth and pink from expensive soap. He smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Hartwell, it's been a long time." "Not long enough." Blackwood's smile flickered. "I see the frontier hasn't improved your manners. State your business." The railroad attorney pulled a document from his coat, held it out like an offering. "I'm here as the legal guardian of the Dawson children, appointed by Judge Cornelius Hale." He nodded toward the cabin. "I've come to collect them." Caleb didn't take the paper. "They just got here. They're half frozen. They need rest." "Of course." Blackwood's voice dripped with sympathy. "I'll take them to the boarding house in town. Mrs. Fletcher will care for them until proper arrangements can be made." "That's so." "The law requires it, Mr. Hartwell. These children need a proper guardian, not a—" He paused, let the silence do his work. "Not a bachelor rancher living alone in the wilderness." Sheriff Webb shifted his weight. "Caleb, I don't like this any more than you do, but the paperwork's in order. Judge Hale signed it himself." "Let me see it." Blackwood handed over the document. Caleb read it slowly, his lawyer's eye scanning for the details that mattered. Last will and testament of Michael Dawson. Executor and guardian, Marcus Blackwood. Date, October 15th, 1886. 3 months before the fire. Signature at the bottom. Michael Dawson's name written in a careful hand. Except it wasn't Michael's hand. Caleb had seen Michael Dawson's signature on legal documents. The man always made his capital M like twin mountains. This signature had peaks like saw teeth. And Michael never spelled out first names, he always wrote initial and surname to save ink. This will was forged. Caleb folded the paper, handed it back. "These children aren't going anywhere." Blackwood's smile vanished. "I beg your pardon. You heard me. Mr. Hartwell, I have a court order. If you refuse to comply, Sheriff Webb will be forced to—" "To what?" Caleb stepped forward. He was taller than Blackwood by 4 inches, broader by 50 pounds. "Arrest me for protecting 3 orphans from the man who murdered their parents." The silence stretched tight as a hangman's rope. Sheriff Webb's hand moved toward his pistol, then stopped. Blackwood's face went pale, then red. "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth. That boy in there saw you throw the fire bottle that killed his mama and papa." "A child's fantasy. Grief does terrible things to young minds." "Does it? Then you won't mind waiting while I send a telegram to the Territorial Marshal's office." Blackwood's eyes flickered, just for a moment. But Caleb saw it, the calculation, the fear. "I'll give you 3 days," Blackwood said softly. 3 days to reconsider. After that, I'll be back with federal marshals, and I won't be as understanding." He turned and walked back to the wagon, climbed up, nodded to the sheriff. Webb lingered a moment longer. His voice dropped low. "Be careful, Caleb. You don't know what you're getting into." "I know exactly what I'm getting into." The sheriff shook his head and drove away. The wagon wheels crunched over frozen snow until the sound faded into the wind. Caleb stood on the porch for a long time watching the empty road. Behind him, the door creaked open. Toby appeared, his face white as new snow. "Is he gone?" "For now." "He'll come back." "Yeah." Caleb put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "He will." "What are we gonna do?" Caleb looked at the barn, at the mountains, at the winter sky heavy with clouds. Then he looked at Toby, at this boy who'd walked through hell to save his family. "We're gonna fight," Caleb said, "and we're gonna win." That night, after the children were asleep, Caleb sat at the kitchen table with a lamp and the map Toby had hidden in his boot. He traced the lines with his finger. The north ridge of the Dawson Ranch. The gold vein marked in red. If this map was accurate, if there really was a fortune in gold under that land, then everything made sense. The railroad didn't just want the Dawson property for a spur line. They wanted the mineral rights. They wanted the gold, and they'd killed to get it. A knock at the door made him reach for his rifle. "It's Ruth." A woman's voice, clear and steady. "Ruth Whitfield, from the telegraph office." Caleb relaxed, set the rifle down, opened the door. Ruth Whitfield stood in the cold, wrapped in a heavy coat, her gray hair escaping from beneath a wool cap. She was 45, a widow for 7 years, and she ran the telegraph office with the efficiency of a military general. "May I come in? It's late." "I know." Her eyes were urgent. "But you need to see this." She stepped inside, pulling a notebook from her coat. Caleb recognized it. She kept records of every telegram that passed through her office. "I write down everything that seems wrong," she said. "Habit from when my husband ran the office. He said telegraph operators see the world's secrets before anyone else." "What did you find?" Ruth opened the notebook, pointed to an entry. "December 12, 1886, day before the Dawson wagon burned." She read aloud. "Handle Dawson problem on road to Miller's Pass. Stop. Make it look accidental. Stop." Caleb's blood went cold. "Who sent it?" "Marcus Blackwood, to a rail camp outside Helena." Ruth flipped the page. "And there's more. December 14th, day after the fire. Dawson problem resolved. Stop. Proceed with estate acquisition. Stop." He put it in writing. He was arrogant, thought no one would ever check. Ruth closed the notebook. "But I check everything, Mr. Hartwell. Everything." Caleb looked at her. At this woman who'd spent 7 years alone, running her office, minding her business, seeing secrets pass through her hands every day. "Why are you helping me?" Ruth's face softened. "Because I knew Sarah Dawson. She used to bring me honey from her bees. And when my husband died, she sat with me for 3 days straight, so I wouldn't be alone." She paused. Her voice caught. "Good people don't deserve what happened to them. And those children don't deserve to be handed over to the man who murdered their parents." Caleb nodded slowly. "I need to prove that will is forged." "Then you'll need the original marriage certificate, the birth certificates, anything that shows Michael Dawson's real signature." "Where would those be?" "Territorial Records Office in Helena, 3 days' ride in good weather." Ruth pulled her coat tighter. "In this weather, a week, maybe more." "I don't have a week. Blackwood gave me 3 days." "Then you'll need help." Ruth met his eyes. Reverend Ezra Crane married Michael and Sarah Dawson 12 years ago. He'd have a copy of the marriage certificate in his church records. "Where is he?" "Silverbow. Half a day's ride." She moved toward the door, then stopped. "Mr. Hartwell. Caleb. Be careful. Blackwood has Pinkerton agents on his payroll. He has Judge Hale in his pocket. He has half this territory bought and paid for. And the other half," Ruth smiled. It was small, but it was real. "The other half is waiting to see if anyone's brave enough to stand up to him." She left, disappearing into the darkness. Caleb watched her go, then closed the door and leaned against it. 3 days. 3 children, 1 forged will. And a railroad attorney who'd already killed twice to get what he wanted. The fire crackled. In the other room, Toby murmured in his sleep. One of the twins, Grace, he thought made a soft cooing sound. Caleb walked to the doorway and looked at them. 3 small shapes in the firelight, the last of the Dawson family. He thought about his wife, dead 9 years now. About Sarah buried beside her mother before she ever got to grow up. About the empty rooms and the silent dinners and the long gray years of just surviving. These children needed him. And maybe, just maybe, he needed them too. "I won't let him take you," Caleb whispered. "I don't care what it costs." Outside, the wind picked up. It rattled the shutters and moaned through the eaves. The sound of a Montana winter that didn't care about legal papers or murdered parents or promises made in the dark. But inside the cabin, the fire burned warm. The children slept safe. And Caleb Hartwell, the loneliest man in the territory, made a decision. Tomorrow he would ride to Silverbow. He would find Reverend Crane. He would get the evidence he needed to prove Blackwood was a fraud and a murderer. And then he would make that man pay for every life he'd destroyed. The wind howled on. The fire crackled. And somewhere in the darkness, the first move in a deadly game had been made. Caleb rode out before dawn. He'd left Toby with instructions. Keep the fire going warm, milk for the twins every 2 hours, don't open the door for anyone. The boy had nodded, his face serious as a judge. What if Blackwood comes back? He won't, not yet. Caleb had handed him a loaded rifle. But if anyone tries to break in, you fire one shot through the roof. I'll hear it. You're coming back, right? The question hit harder than Caleb expected. He'd knelt down, put his hands on the boy's shoulders. I'm coming back, Toby. I promise. Now he pushed his horse hard through the frozen morning, the wind cutting at his face like broken glass. Silverbow was 12 miles south over Miller's Pass, the same road where the Dawson wagon had burned. He tried not to think about that as he rode. Reverend Ezra Crane's church sat at the edge of town, a small wooden building with a crooked steeple. Caleb tied his horse and knocked on the rectory door. The man who answered was tall and lean, with white hair and eyes that had seen war. He wore a Union chaplain's cross on a chain around his neck. Caleb Hartwell, you know me. I know of you. The Reverend stepped back, gestured him inside. Ruth Whitfield telegraphed this morning, said you'd be coming. The rectory was warm, a fire crackling in the hearth. Books lined every wall. The Reverend poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from Caleb at a scarred wooden table. You want to know about Michael and Sarah Dawson? I want proof that will is forged. Crane nodded slowly. I married them, 12 years ago right here in this church. Sarah was 19. Michael was 23. They were so young. His voice caught. So full of hope. I'm sorry for your loss. It's not my loss that matters. The Reverend's eyes sharpened. It's those children. 3 babies orphaned because a railroad man wanted their land. You know about that. I know what everyone knows. That the wagon accident wasn't an accident. That Marcus Blackwood has been buying up land all over this territory, and the people who won't sell have a way of dying. Crane leaned forward. What I didn't know until this morning is that there's a witness. Toby saw everything. Then God help that boy. Because Blackwood will do anything to silence him. Caleb's jaw tightened. I won't let that happen. No. The Reverend studied him. I don't believe you will. He stood, moved to a cabinet in the corner, and pulled out a leather-bound registry. Marriage certificate. Michael Dawson and Sarah Eleanor Price. June 14, 1875. He opened the book, pointed to a signature. That's Michael's hand. See how he makes his M like 2 mountains. Caleb looked at it, then pulled the forged will from his pocket and laid it beside the registry. The signatures weren't even close. That's not his writing, Crane said flatly. Whoever forged that didn't know Michael well enough. Will you testify to that? In front of Judge Hale? The Reverend laughed bitterly. Hale's been in Blackwood's pocket for years. He'd throw out my testimony before I finished speaking. Then we need a different judge. There isn't one. Hale controls the entire territorial court system. Crane paused. Unless what? There's talk of a new federal appointment. Judge Martha Wilson from St. Louis. She's supposed to arrive next month to review corruption cases. The Reverend's voice dropped. If we could get this evidence to her before Blackwood knows she's coming. How do we do that? I don't know yet, but I'll find out. Crane closed the registry. In the meantime, take this. He handed Caleb a sealed envelope. What is it? Copies of the marriage certificate and the children's birth records. If anything happens to me, you'll have proof of who those children really are. Caleb took the envelope. You think Blackwood would come after you? I think Blackwood would burn this church to the ground if it served his purposes. The Reverend's face was grim. He's not a man, Mr. Hartwell. He's a machine, and machines don't stop until someone breaks them. Caleb rode back faster than he'd come, the envelope tucked inside his coat. The sun was setting when he reached the ranch. He saw smoke rising from the chimney and felt something loosen in his chest. The cabin was still standing. The children were still safe. Toby met him at the door, the rifle still in his hands. "Anyone come?" "No, sir, but someone was watching." Caleb froze. "What do you mean?" "I saw him, on the ridge about noon, a man on horseback. He just sat there for maybe an hour, then rode off." "Could you see his face?" "No, too far." The boy hesitated. "But his horse was black, with white markings on its chest." Caleb knew that horse. It belonged to Blackwood's foreman, a man named Cole Jennings, a Pinkerton agent before he went private. They were being watched. "Listen to me, Toby." Caleb knelt, gripped the boy's shoulders. "From now on, we don't go anywhere alone. We don't open the door unless we know who's on the other side. Understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good boy." That night, Caleb sat at the table with the evidence spread before him. The forged will, the real marriage certificate, Ruth's notebook with the telegram records, the map showing the gold. It was enough to prove Blackwood was a murderer. But it wasn't enough to stop him. Not yet. He needed more. The knock came just after midnight. Caleb grabbed his rifle, moved to the window. Outside in the moonlight, he saw two figures on horseback. One he recognized, Ruth Whitfield. The other was a stranger, a man wrapped in a heavy coat, his face hidden by a hat pulled low. "It's Ruth," she called. "I brought someone you need to meet." Caleb opened the door, kept the rifle ready. Ruth dismounted first. The stranger followed, moving stiffly like a man in pain. When he stepped into the lamplight, Caleb saw why. The left side of his face was a mass of burn scars. His left arm hung at an awkward angle, permanently damaged, but his eyes were sharp and clear. "Caleb Hartwell." The man's voice was hoarse. "My name is Frank Dillon. I'm a private investigator." "What happened to you?" "Marcus Blackwood happened to me." Dillon lowered himself into a chair, wincing. "Michael Dawson hired me 3 months ago to investigate Blackwood's land acquisitions. I found evidence of fraud, forgery, bribery enough to put him away for life. And then Blackwood found out." Dillon's scarred face twisted. "His men caught me on the road outside Helena, beat me half to death, shot me twice, set me on fire and left me in a ditch." Ruth poured him coffee. Her hands were steady, but her face was pale. "How did you survive?" "A trapper found me. Took me to his cabin, kept me alive for 2 months." Dillon reached into his coat, pulled out a battered leather case. "But they didn't find this." He opened the case. Inside were photographs, documents, handwritten notes. "This is everything I gathered on Blackwood. Names, dates, amounts. Every piece of land he stole, every man he bribed, every family he destroyed." Dillon's voice hardened. "Including the Dawsons." Caleb took the case, looked through it. His blood ran cold. "There are 15 families here. 16 counting the Dawsons." Dillon leaned forward. "Blackwood has been doing this for years. The railroad wants land, he gets it for them, by any means necessary." Why hasn't anyone stopped him? Because the people with power are in his pocket. Judge Hale, the territorial governor, half the sheriffs in Montana. Ruth's voice was bitter. "Good people are afraid to speak up. They've seen what happens to those who do. Then we make them not afraid." Everyone looked at Caleb. Blackwood's power comes from fear, from people believing no one can touch him. He stood paced to the window. "But if we expose him publicly, if we bring this evidence to someone he can't buy, his whole empire falls apart." "Who?" Dillon asked. "Who can't he buy?" "Judge Martha Wilson. She's coming next month from St. Louis." Ruth nodded slowly. "I've heard of her. They call her the Iron Lady. She put 3 railroad executives in prison back in Missouri." "Can you get a message to her?" "I can try. but Blackwood monitors the telegraph lines. Any message I send, he'll intercept. Caleb thought for a moment. Then he turned to Dylan. You were an investigator. You know people. Can you get to St. Louis? Dylan laughed a harsh sound. Look at me, Hartwell. I can barely ride a horse. Then we find someone who can. Who Blackwood has eyes everywhere. Anyone who tries to leave the territory will be followed. The door creaked. Everyone turned hands going to weapons. Toby stood in the doorway, his face pale in the lamplight. I can do it. Toby, go back to bed. No. The boy stepped forward. I'm the only one Blackwood doesn't know. He's never seen my face. I can ride to Helena, catch the train east. Absolutely not. Mr. Hartwell, you're 10 years old. Caleb's voice was sharp. I'm not sending a child across the country alone. I'm not a child. Toby's jaw set. I dragged my brother and sister through a blizzard for 3 days. I watched my parents burn to death. I hid in the snow while their murderer walked 10 feet from where I was lying. His voice cracked, but he didn't look away. I can do this. Let me help. The room went quiet. Ruth looked at Caleb with something like pride. Dylan studied the boy with new respect. Caleb felt his heart breaking. Toby, my pa trusted you to protect us, but he also taught me that a man stands up for his family. The boy's chin lifted. This is me standing up. Caleb closed his eyes. He thought about Michael Dawson, a man he'd barely known who'd sent his children to a stranger's door with nothing but faith. He thought about his own daughter, who'd never gotten the chance to grow up. He thought about what it meant to be a father. No, he said finally. You're not going to St. Louis. Toby's face fell. But you are going to help. Caleb knelt, met the boy's eyes. You know this territory better than anyone. You know the back trails, the hiding spots. When the time comes, I'll need you to guide the marshals to wherever Blackwood is hiding his evidence. Really? Really? Caleb put his hand on Toby's shoulder. You're part of this family now. And family works together. Toby's eyes filled with tears. He tried to blink them back, but they spilled over anyway. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you, Pa. The word hung in the air. Pa. Not Mr. Hartwell. Not Sir. Pa. Caleb's throat closed. He pulled the boy into his arms and held him tight. I got you, he said. I got all 3 of you. Ruth wiped her eyes. Even Dylan looked away, his scarred face soft with something that might have been hope. Outside, the wind howled on. But inside the cabin, something had changed. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were a family. And they had a fight to win. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Ruth worked the telegraph, sending carefully coded messages to contacts in Helena and beyond. Dylan organized his evidence, making copies of everything, hiding them in 3 different locations. Caleb fortified the ranch, boarding up windows, stockpiling ammunition, and Toby learned to shoot. Hold it steady. Caleb adjusted the boy's grip on the rifle. Breathe in. Let half out. Then squeeze. The gun kicked. The tin can on the fence post flew off. Good. Again. By the 3rd day, Toby could hit 6 cans out of 10. Not perfect, but good enough. Why are you teaching me this? The boy asked as they walked back to the cabin. Because I might not always be there to protect you. You said you'd never leave. And I meant it. Caleb stopped, faced him. But life doesn't always go the way we plan. Your pa learned that. I learned that. He paused. A man prepares for the worst so he can fight for the best. Toby nodded slowly. Pa used to say something like that. Smart man, your pa. He was. The boy looked at the mountains, his face thoughtful. I wish you could have known him better. I wish I could have too. They walked in silence for a while. Then Toby spoke again. Mr. Hart, Pa. Caleb's heart jumped at the word. Yeah. When this is over, What happens to us? What do you mean? Me and Grace and Henry. If we beat Blackwood, if we get our land back, where do we go? Caleb stopped walking. He looked at this boy, this brave, broken, beautiful boy who'd survived things no child should ever have to face. Where do you want to go? Toby's voice was small. I want to stay here, with you. Then you stay. Really? Toby. Caleb knelt, put his hands on the boy's shoulders. I lost my family 9 years ago. I've been walking around like a dead man ever since. Then you showed up at my gate with your brother and sister half frozen and scared and brave as hell. He paused, fighting to keep his voice steady. You saved me, son. You brought me back to life. And I will spend every day I have left on this earth making sure you and Grace and Henry have everything you deserve. Toby threw his arms around Caleb's neck and held on like he'd never let go. They stayed like that for a long time, father and son, while the winter wind blew cold around them and the mountains stood silent witness. On the 4th day, Blackwood came back. This time, he didn't come alone. Caleb counted 12 riders coming up the road. Blackwood in front, Cole Jennings beside him, and 10 more men in matching black coats. Pinkerton agents, every one. Get the children to the cellar, Caleb told Ruth. Now. She moved fast, gathering the twins while Toby grabbed the rifle. I'm staying. Toby. I'm staying. The boy's voice was iron. This is my fight too. There wasn't time to argue. Caleb nodded, positioned Toby at the back window, and stepped onto the porch. Blackwood dismounted 50 feet from the house. His smile was cold as the wind. Mr. Hartwell, I gave you 3 days. Time's up. So it is. I have a federal marshal's warrant for the Dawson children. Blackwood held up a paper. Signed by Judge Hale himself. You will surrender them to me now, or you will be arrested for kidnapping. That warrant's not worth the paper it's written on. The law says otherwise. The law? Caleb laughed a hard sound. You don't give a damn about the law, Blackwood. You never have. Careful, Hartwell. I know what you did. Caleb stepped forward. I know about the Dawsons. I know about the 15 other families you destroyed. I know about the gold under that ranch and the bribes you paid to Judge Hale. Blackwood's smile flickered. I have evidence, photographs, documents, witness testimony. Caleb's voice carried across the frozen yard. And in 3 weeks, Judge Martha Wilson arrives from St. Louis. She's going to see every piece of it. The Pinkerton agents shifted uneasily. They hadn't signed up for a corruption scandal. Blackwood's face went red. You're bluffing. Try me. For a long moment, no one moved. The wind howled between them. Caleb's hand rested on his pistol. He could feel Toby watching from the window ready. Then, Blackwood laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. You think you've won something, Hartwell? You think a few pieces of paper can stop what's coming? He stepped closer, lowered his voice. I've destroyed men with more power than you'll ever have. I've burned down towns. I've made witnesses disappear. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Blackwood's eyes were flat empty. Those children are coming with me. Today, or tomorrow, or next week. But they're coming, and when they do, I'm going to make sure you watch. Caleb moved so fast, Blackwood didn't see it coming. His fist connected with the railroad man's jaw. Blackwood went down hard, his expensive coat dragging in the mud. The Pinkerton agents drew their guns. Caleb drew his. Anyone else want to try? No one moved. Cole Jennings helped Blackwood to his feet. Blood dripped from the attorney's split lip. His eyes burned with hatred. You just signed your death warrant, Hartwell. Get off my land. This isn't over. No. Caleb cocked his pistol. It's not. Now get off my land before I put a bullet in something you'll miss. Blackwood stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned, mounted his horse, and rode away. The Pinkerton agents followed, casting nervous glances over their shoulders. Caleb watched them until they disappeared over the ridge. Then his legs gave out. He sat down hard on the porch steps, his hands shaking, his heart pounding. Ruth came out of the cabin, the twins in her arms. Toby followed, his face pale. Pa. Caleb looked up at the boy, at this child who'd called him father, at the twins who would never remember their real parents, at Ruth who'd risked everything to help a stranger. We need to move, he said. Tonight. Blackwood won't wait 3 weeks. He'll come for us before the judge arrives. Where will we go? Caleb thought about the ranchers he knew, the men who'd stood against the railroad before, the ones who had nothing left to lose. I know a place, he said, but first we need to send a message. To who? Caleb stood, his jaw set. To everyone in this territory who's ever been afraid of Marcus Blackwood. He looked at Ruth. It's time to stop being afraid. They left at midnight. Caleb loaded the wagon with everything that mattered: blankets, food, ammunition, the evidence against Blackwood. Ruth drove while he rode alongside, rifle across his saddle. Toby sat in the back with the twins, watching the darkness behind them. Where are we going? The boy whispered. Miguel Santos's ranch, 20 miles north. The Texas Ranger. Former Texas Ranger. He's been fighting the railroad longer than anyone in this territory. They traveled without torches, using moonlight to guide them. The cold bit through their coats. Grace whimpered in her sleep, and Toby pulled her closer, warming her with his body. Caleb kept his eyes on the ridgeline. Blackwood would send men after them. The only question was when. They'd covered maybe 8 miles when he heard it. Hoofbeats, coming fast from the south. Get down! He wheeled his horse around, putting himself between the wagon and the sound. Ruth, don't stop. Whatever happens, don't stop. Caleb. Go! Ruth snapped the reins. The wagon lurched forward, wheels crunching over frozen ground. Caleb waited. 3 riders emerged from the darkness, Cole Jennings in front, 2 Pinkerton agents behind him. They pulled up 20 feet away, hands on their guns. Evening, Hartwell? Jennings's voice was casual, almost friendly. Taking a midnight ride? None of your business. See, that's where you're wrong. Jennings nudged his horse forward. Mr. Blackwood's real interested in where you're going. Thought we'd escort you. I don't need an escort. Wasn't asking. Caleb's hand moved toward his rifle. I wouldn't. Jennings nodded at his men. 3 against 1. Bad odds even for you. Maybe. Definitely. The foreman smiled. Now why don't you turn that wagon around and... A shot rang out. One of the Pinkerton agents screamed, clutching his shoulder. His horse reared, throwing him to the ground. From somewhere in the darkness, a voice called out, Next one goes through your head, Jennings. Caleb recognized that voice. Miguel Santos. More riders emerged from the tree line. 5, then 7, then 10. Ranchers, every one of them, rifles raised. Jennings's face went pale. You were saying something about odds, Caleb asked. The foreman looked at his men. The wounded agent was groaning in the snow. The other one had his hands raised, eyes wide with fear. This ain't over, Hartwell. I know. Caleb cocked his rifle. Now ride, before I let these boys finish what they started. Jennings hesitated. Then he turned his horse and galloped back the way he'd come, his men following. Miguel rode up beside Caleb, a grin splitting his weathered face. Cutting it a little close, weren't you? Had to make sure they were actually following. Caleb clasped his hand. Thank you. Thank me when this is over. Miguel looked at the wagon, at Ruth and Toby, and the twins huddled together. Let's get your family somewhere safe. Your family. The words hit Caleb harder than he expected. Yeah, he said quietly. Let's do that. Miguel's ranch was a fortress. 20 years of fighting rustlers, outlaws, and railroad men had taught him to prepare for the worst. The main house sat on a hill with clear sightlines in every direction. Armed men patrolled the perimeter. A network of tunnels connected the buildings, allowing escape if the worst happened. "Welcome to the Resistance," Miguel said as they rode through the gates. Inside the main house, more people waited. Ranchers Caleb recognized David Mercer from the Valley Old Pete Garrison, who'd lost his wife to railroad violence, the Chen family who'd been burned out twice, and others he didn't know, men and women with hard faces and harder stories. Ruth found a corner to settle the twins. Toby stayed close to Caleb, his eyes taking in everything. "How many?" Caleb asked. 32, counting you and your people." Miguel poured whiskey, handed him a glass. "More coming, word spreading." "About what?" "About you." Miguel smiled. "The man who punched Marcus Blackwood in the face, the man who's got evidence to bring him down." He raised his glass. "You've given people hope, Caleb. First time in years. Hope won't stop bullets. No, but it'll make people willing to face them." A commotion at the door made them both turn. Frank Dillon limped in, supported by 2 ranchers. His face was gray with exhaustion, but his eyes burned. "They burned it," he gasped. "They burned your ranch." Caleb felt the blood drain from his face. "When?" "2 hours ago. I was watching from the ridge when I saw the flames." Dillon collapsed into a chair. "Barn first, then the house. They didn't leave anything standing." Toby made a small sound. Caleb turned to see the boy standing frozen, his face white. "The animals? I don't know. I'm sorry." Caleb closed his eyes. His ranch, his home. 9 years of his life gone in a single night. "Pa." He opened his eyes. Toby was looking at him with fear, not for himself, but for Caleb. "It's just a building," Caleb said. His voice was steady, even though his heart was breaking. "Buildings can be rebuilt." "But your wife, your daughter, their things were in there." Caleb felt something crack inside him. The photographs he'd kept by his bed. His wife's wedding dress preserved in a cedar chest. Sarah's first shoes, tiny leather things barely bigger than his palm. All gone. Ruth came to him, put her hand on his arm. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I'm so sorry." "It doesn't matter." Caleb straightened, forced the grief down. "Blackwood thinks he's broken me. He's wrong. What do we do now? We do what we planned." He looked around the room at the faces watching him. "We take the evidence to Judge Wilson. We expose Blackwood for what he is. And we end this." "The judge isn't here yet," Miguel said. "She's not due for another 2 weeks. Then we bring her here faster." Everyone stared at him. "How?" Caleb turned to Ruth. "You said you had contacts in Helena. People who could get messages out without Blackwood intercepting them." "I do, but..." "Send word to St. Louis. Tell Judge Wilson that Marcus Blackwood is destroying evidence and killing witnesses. Tell her if she doesn't come now, there won't be anything left to investigate." Ruth nodded slowly. "I can try. But even if she leaves immediately, it'll take at least a week to get here. Then we hold out for a week. Against Blackwood, against the Pinkertons." David Mercer shook his head. "He's got 50 men, maybe more. We've got 32. We've got something he doesn't." "What's that?" Caleb looked at Toby, at Ruth, at Frank Dillon with his burned face and unbroken spirit, at the ranchers who'd lost everything but still showed up to fight. "We've got nothing left to lose." The first attack came 2 days later. Caleb was teaching Toby to reload when the lookout's whistle pierced the air. 3 short blasts, riders approaching from the east. "Get the children underground." Caleb grabbed his rifle. "Now!" Ruth scooped up the twins. Toby hesitated. "I can fight." "I know you can, but I need you to protect your brother and sister. Can you do that?" The boy's jaw tightened. He nodded. "Good. Go." Caleb ran to the wall where Miguel and the others had gathered. 20 riders were approaching Pinkerton agents in their black coats, rifles gleaming. "They're testing us," Miguel said, "seeing what we've got. Then let's show them." The Pinkertons pulled up 100 yards out. One of them rode forward under a white flag. "Marcus Blackwood offers terms," he shouted. "Surrender the Dawson children and the evidence you've stolen. In exchange, you'll be allowed to leave the territory unharmed." Caleb stepped up on the wall where everyone could see him. "Tell Blackwood to go to hell." The messenger's face hardened. "You're making a mistake." "No. He made the mistake when he murdered Michael and Sarah Dawson. He made another one when he burned my home." Caleb raised his rifle. "Now get off this land before I put a hole in that white flag." The messenger wheeled his horse and galloped back to his men. They conferred briefly, then rode away. "That's it." Pete Garrison sounded surprised. "They're leaving. For now." Miguel's face was grim. "They'll be back, and next time they won't be talking." He was right. The next attack came at dawn, 3 days later. 30 men this time armed with rifles and torches. They came from 2 directions trying to split the defenders. The battle lasted 3 hours. Caleb fired until his rifle was too hot to hold, then switched to his pistol. Beside him, Miguel directed the defense, moving men where they were needed, shoring up weak points. 2 ranchers fell. David Mercer took a bullet through the arm. One of the Chen boys was hit in the leg, but they held. When the Pinkertons finally retreated, they left 6 of their own behind. "They'll come back with more," Ruth said, bandaging David's arm. "Blackwood won't stop until he gets what he wants." "Neither will I." That night, Caleb found Toby in the cellar with the twins. The boy was singing softly an old lullaby that Caleb recognized. His wife used to sing it to Sarah. "They asleep?" Toby nodded. "Grace was scared by the gunfire. Henry too. But they're okay now." Caleb sat down beside him. "How about you? You scared?" "Yes, sir." The boy didn't hesitate. "But Pa used to say courage isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing the right thing anyway." "Your Pa was a wise man. He learned it from someone." Toby looked at him. "He said you taught him that, back in Denver when you helped him fight the mining company." Caleb was quiet for a moment. He barely remembered that case. It had seemed like such a small thing at the time. "I didn't know it would matter so much." "Everything matters." Toby's voice was soft. "That's what Mama always said. Every kindness, every good deed, it all comes back around." Caleb thought about that. About Michael Dawson sending his children to a stranger's door. About Ruth risking her life to help a family she barely knew. About Miguel and the ranchers standing up against impossible odds. "Your mama was right." "I know." Toby leaned against him. "That's why I'm not giving up. Not ever." Caleb put his arm around the boy and held him close. "Neither am I, son. Neither am I." The message came a week later. Ruth burst into the main house, her face flushed, a telegram clutched in her hand. "She's coming, Judge Wilson. She left St. Louis 3 days ago." The room erupted. Men cheered, slapped each other on the back. Miguel grabbed Caleb's hand and shook it hard. "How long?" Caleb asked. 4 days, maybe 5. She's coming by train to Helena, then by wagon to Providence. Blackwood will try to stop her. He doesn't know she's coming." Ruth smiled. "I sent the message through a friend in Denver. Blackwood's been monitoring the Helena lines, but he missed this one." "Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be." Caleb nodded. 4 days. They just had to hold out for 4 more days. But Blackwood wasn't finished. The fire started at midnight. Caleb smelled the smoke before he saw the flames. He was on watch at the north wall when the acrid scent hit his nostrils. "Fire, fire in the stables." Men ran toward the blaze. Caleb sprinted to the main house. "Ruth, get the children." She was already moving the twins in her arms. Toby followed, his face pale in the firelight. "It's a distraction." Miguel appeared beside Caleb, rifle in hand. "They're trying to draw us out." "The animals." Let them burn. If we open those gates, we're dead. Caleb watched the stables collapse, heard the screaming of horses trapped inside. It took everything he had not to run toward them. Pa! Toby tugged at his sleeve. Someone's coming. Caleb turned. A lone rider was approaching from the west, moving fast. Hold fire! He raised his hand. I know that horse. The rider pulled up at the gate. It was Sheriff Jonas Webb, his face streaked with sweat and dust. Let me in, quick! Miguel nodded to his men. The gate opened. Webb rode through, dismounting before his horse had fully stopped. You need to leave, now. What are you talking about? Blackwood's done playing games. The sheriff grabbed Caleb's arm. He's called in federal marshals. Told them you're harboring fugitives and stolen property. They're coming with 100 men. Federal marshals. Friends of his in Washington. They'll be here by morning. Webb's eyes were desperate. If you're still here when they arrive, they'll hang you all as outlaws. We haven't broken any laws. Doesn't matter. Blackwood's got the paperwork. He's got the witnesses. He's got everything he needs to make this legal. The sheriff paused. I'm sorry, Caleb. I tried to stop it, but he's too powerful. Caleb felt the walls closing in. Everything they'd fought for, everything they'd sacrificed, none of it mattered if Blackwood could turn the federal government against them. There has to be another way. There isn't. Not anymore. Webb looked at Toby at the twins sleeping in Ruth's arms. Save those children. Get them across the border into Canada. It's the only chance they've got. Caleb's mind raced. Canada was 5 days' ride in good weather. In winter with children, it could take twice that long. And Blackwood would have men watching every road. I'm not running. Caleb, those children's parents died because they wouldn't run. They died standing up for what was right. He looked at Toby. I'm not going to teach their son that the answer to injustice is running away. Webb stared at him. Then slowly he nodded. You're a damn fool, Hartwell. Probably. What are you going to do? Caleb turned to Miguel, to Ruth, to the ranchers who'd given up everything to stand with him. We're going to meet Judge Wilson on the road. We're going to give her the evidence before Blackwood can stop us. And then we're going to let the law do what it's supposed to do. And if the law fails? Caleb looked at the burning stables, at the armed men on the walls, at his son standing brave in the firelight. Then we'll find another way. They rode out at first light. Caleb, Miguel, Ruth with the twins. Toby and 15 armed ranchers. Frank Dillon stayed behind with the others to hold the ranch if Blackwood's men came back. The Helena Road is the fastest, Miguel said as they rode. But it's also the most dangerous. Blackwood will have men watching it. Then we take the mountain pass. In winter, with children. We don't have a choice. The mountain pass was brutal. The trail was narrow, icy, barely wide enough for a single horse. They moved in single file, picking their way over frozen rocks and through drifts of snow. The twins cried from the cold. Toby rode behind Caleb, his arms wrapped around the older man's waist, shivering despite the blankets piled on him. You okay, son? Yes, sir. The boy's teeth chattered. Just cold. We'll stop soon. Get warm. No. Toby's voice was fierce. We keep going. We have to reach the judge. Caleb felt a surge of pride so strong it almost overwhelmed him. That's right. We keep going. They made camp that night in a shallow cave, barely protected from the wind. Caleb built a small fire, careful to hide the smoke. Ruth warmed milk for the twins while Miguel posted guards. Toby sat close to Caleb, his face serious. Pa? Yeah. What happens after? When this is all over? What do you mean? I mean, what happens to us? Me and Grace and Henry. The boy's voice wavered. Do we go back to our ranch? Do we stay with you? Caleb put his arm around him. Where do you want to be? With you. No hesitation. All of us. Together. Then that's where you'll be. Caleb pulled him close. I'm not going anywhere, Toby. Not ever. The boy was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I love you, Pa. The words hit Caleb like a thunderbolt. Simple words, 3 syllables. But they broke something open inside him that had been locked away for 9 years. I love you too, son. His voice cracked. I love all 3 of you. Toby buried his face in Caleb's chest. His small shoulders shook, but whether from cold or emotion, Caleb couldn't tell. Ruth watched them from across the fire. Her eyes were wet. We're going to make it, she said softly. We have to. Caleb nodded. In that moment, holding his son surrounded by people who'd become his family, he believed it. They had to make it. They reached the Helena Road on the 3rd day. Miguel spotted the wagon first, a heavy coach surrounded by 4 armed riders. That's her, Ruth breathed. That's Judge Wilson. They rode down from the hills, hands raised to show they meant no harm. The riders tensed hands going to their guns. Hold, Caleb called out. We're not here to fight. We need to speak with Judge Wilson. The coach door opened. A woman stepped out, gray-haired, stern-faced, with eyes that looked like they'd seen everything and weren't impressed by any of it. I'm Martha Wilson. Who are you? Caleb Hartwell, ma'am. I have evidence that Marcus Blackwood murdered 2 people and forged documents to steal their children's inheritance. The judge's eyes narrowed. You're the one who's been causing all the trouble. Yes, ma'am. Blackwood says you're a kidnapper and a thief. Blackwood is a liar and a murderer. Judge Wilson studied him for a long moment. Then she looked at Toby at the twins sleeping in Ruth's arms. Are those the Dawson children? Yes, ma'am. Their father was my friend. He died trying to protect them. And now you're trying to protect them. With everything I have. The judge was silent. The wind howled around them. Caleb felt his heart pounding. Then Martha Wilson smiled. Mr. Hartwell, I've been investigating railroad corruption for 20 years. I've seen every kind of criminal, every kind of scheme, every kind of lie. She stepped forward. But I've never seen a man willing to lose everything for 3 children who aren't even his blood. They're my family now. Yes. Her voice softened. I can see that. She turned to her riders. We're changing course. I want to see this evidence. And then I want to meet Marcus Blackwood face to face. Caleb felt something loosen in his chest. Hope. Fragile but real. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me yet. Judge Wilson's eyes went hard again. If your evidence doesn't hold up, I'll have you arrested myself. It'll hold up. Then let's move. We have a lot of work to do before Blackwood knows I'm here. They rode together toward Providence, the judge's wagon surrounded by ranchers on horseback. Toby rode beside Caleb, his face bright with hope for the first time in weeks. We're going to win, the boy said. Aren't we, Pa? Caleb looked at him, at Ruth, at the twins, at the allies who'd risked everything to stand with him. Yeah, he said. We're going to win. They reached Providence at dusk. The town looked different now. Quieter, emptier. Caleb counted only a handful of people on the streets, and those who were out hurried past without meeting anyone's eyes. Blackwood's locked the town down, Miguel said quietly. No one in or out without his permission. How do we get through? We don't. Judge Wilson stepped down from her wagon. We go straight to the courthouse and we make our presence known. That's suicide. That's justice, Mr. Hartwell. I didn't come all this way to sneak around like a thief. Caleb looked at Ruth. She held the twins close, her face pale but determined. The children should stay back. No. Toby's voice was firm. We're coming with you. Son, they killed my parents. They burned our home. They tried to steal everything we had. The boy's jaw set. I want to see Blackwood's face when he loses. Caleb felt his throat tighten. This brave, fierce, broken boy. Stay close to me, no matter what happens. Yes, sir. They rode down Main Street in a column. Judge Wilson's wagon in front flanked by her armed escorts, Caleb and the ranchers behind rifles ready. Ruth and the children in the middle protected. People came out of their homes to watch. Faces appeared in windows. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Is that the federal judge? Hartwell's back. Lord have mercy." By the time they reached the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. 50 people, then 100, then more. Ranchers, merchants, wives, children, all watching, waiting. Sheriff Webb met them on the steps. "What in God's name are you doing, Hartwell?" "My job, Sheriff." Judge Wilson stepped forward. "I'm here to conduct a federal investigation into railroad land fraud. I'll need access to your courthouse and all relevant records." Webb's face went white. "Ma'am, I wasn't asking permission." The sheriff looked at Caleb, then at the crowd, then at the armed men surrounding the judge. "Blackwood's going to— I know exactly what Mr. Blackwood is going to do." Judge Wilson's voice cut like steel. "And I'm counting on it. Now step aside, Sheriff." Webb hesitated. Then slowly he moved. The courthouse was cold and empty. Dust covered the benches. The judge's podium stood bare. "This will do." Judge Wilson nodded to her men. "Secure the entrances. No one comes in without my authorization." "What about Blackwood?" Caleb asked. "Oh, he'll come." She smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Men like him can't resist a chance to win. He'll walk right through that door thinking he can buy me or bully me like everyone else." Her eyes hardened. "He's wrong." They waited. Caleb paced the floor, unable to sit. Ruth tended to the twins who'd fallen asleep despite everything. Toby sat in the front row watching the door. Miguel's men took positions at every window. The tension in the room built with every passing minute. Then the doors burst open. Marcus Blackwood strode in like he owned the place. Cole Jennings flanked him along with a dozen Pinkerton agents. Behind them came Judge Cornelius Hale, his face gray with fear. "What is the meaning of this?" Blackwood's voice echoed off the walls. "This is my territory, my courthouse. This is a federal courthouse, Mr. Blackwood." Judge Wilson didn't rise from her seat. "And it belongs to the United States government, not to you." Blackwood stopped. His eyes swept the room, the armed ranchers, Caleb, the children. "You," he pointed at Caleb, "you're under arrest for kidnapping and theft." "Actually, Mr. Blackwood, you're the one under investigation." Judge Wilson held up a sheaf of papers. "I have evidence of fraud, bribery, and murder. Evidence that links you directly to the deaths of Michael and Sarah Dawson." "That's preposterous." "Is it?" She nodded to Caleb. "Mr. Hartwell, please present your evidence." Caleb stepped forward. His heart was pounding, but his voice was steady. On December 12, 1886, Marcus Blackwood sent a telegram ordering the murder of Michael and Sarah Dawson. I have a copy of that telegram. He handed it to the judge. On December 13th, Blackwood's men burned the Dawson wagon, killing both parents and nearly killing their 3 children. I have an eyewitness to that crime. He looked at Toby. The boy stood. "I saw him." Toby's voice didn't waver. "I saw Mr. Blackwood standing by a tree 40 yards from the road. He threw a fire bottle at our wagon. I watched my parents burn." The crowd murmured. Several women gasped. "The testimony of a child." Blackwood laughed. "This is ridiculous." "I also have testimony from Frank Dillon, a private investigator hired by Michael Dawson." Caleb pulled out Dillon's documents. "Mr. Blackwood's men beat him, shot him, and left him for dead. But he survived, and he kept records of everything." He handed the documents to Judge Wilson. 15 families, 15 ranches stolen through fraud and violence. And now he wants to add the Dawsons to his list. "These are lies." Blackwood's voice rose. "Fabrications created by a desperate man trying to steal children that rightfully belong to you." Judge Wilson stood. "Based on what authority?" "I have legal guardianship. Judge Hale signed the papers himself." "Ah, yes. Judge Hale. She turned to the trembling man. Judge Hale, did you sign guardianship papers for the Dawson children? Yes, but... Were you aware that the will naming Mr. Blackwood as guardian was forged? Forged? Hale's voice cracked. I don't know anything about... I have the original marriage certificate signed by Michael Dawson. Caleb held it up. And I have the forged will. The signatures don't match, not even close. The crowd erupted. Shouts, accusations, people pushing toward the front. Order! Judge Wilson banged her gavel. Order in this court. Blackwood's face had gone from red to white, his hands clenched at his sides. This is a setup. A conspiracy against me by jealous competitors who... Mr. Blackwood. Judge Wilson's voice cut through his protests. I am placing you under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and murder. You can't do that. I just did. She nodded to her men. Take him into custody. The Pinkerton agents tensed. Cole Jennings's hand moved toward his gun. I wouldn't. Miguel's voice was quiet. He and his men had their rifles trained on Blackwood's people. 20 against 12. Bad odds. Jennings looked at Blackwood. The railroad attorney's face was a mask of rage. This isn't over, Blackwood hissed. I have friends in Washington. Powerful friends. This investigation will be shut down before... Your friends in Washington are the reason I'm here. Judge Wilson smiled. They've been taking bribes from you for years. The Attorney General has been building a case against them since August. She paused. You're not the only one who knows how to gather evidence, Mr. Blackwood. The color drained from Blackwood's face. That's impossible. Is it? Did you really think no one was watching? That you could destroy families, steal land, murder innocent people, and no one would care? She stepped closer to him. People care, Mr. Blackwood. They care very much. The Pinkerton agents exchanged glances. Then, one by one, they lowered their weapons. Jennings was the last. He looked at Blackwood for a long moment, then shook his head. I didn't sign up for murder. You coward! I'm done. Jennings unbuckled his gun belt, let it drop to the floor. Find yourself another dog. He walked out. Several other agents followed. Blackwood stood alone. You think this changes anything? His voice had gone cold, dangerous. I built this territory. I made it what it is. Without me, the railroad dies. The economy dies. Everything you people have built. We built it. An old man pushed forward from the crowd. Pete Garrison, his face weathered by decades of ranching. We built it with our sweat and blood. You just stole what we made. I gave you opportunity. You gave us nothing. A woman's voice now. Mrs. Chen, her sons, standing behind her. You burned my home, killed my husband, and you call that opportunity? More voices joined in. David Mercer, other ranchers, merchants who'd been too afraid to speak before. My brother disappeared after he refused to sell. You poisoned our water supply. My father died in your custody. The accusations piled up one after another. Years of rage and grief pouring out. Blackwood backed toward the door, his face twisted with fury and fear. You're all animals. Ungrateful, ignorant animals who don't know what's good for... Caleb stepped into his path. Marcus. Blackwood stopped. I know about your father. The words hung in the air. Blackwood's face went blank. I know what the railroad did to him. How they took his land, his home, his dignity. How he died because he couldn't live with the shame. Shut up. You became the thing you hated. Caleb's voice was quiet, almost gentle. You wanted to fight them, and instead, you became them. I said shut up. Your father would be ashamed of what you've done. Blackwood lunged. Caleb was ready. He caught the man's fist, twisted his arm, drove him to his knees. It's over, Marcus. It's been over for a long time. You just didn't know it. The railroad attorney looked up at him, And for just a moment, Caleb saw something behind the rage and the cruelty. Something broken. Something lost. Then it was gone. "Take him." Judge Wilson nodded to her men. "I want him in chains before nightfall." They dragged Blackwood out. He didn't struggle, didn't speak. His eyes stared at nothing. The crowd parted to let them through. Some people spat. Others just watched in silence. When the doors closed behind him, the courthouse erupted. People cheered, embraced, wept. Years of fear and oppression lifting in a single moment. Miguel grabbed Caleb's hand and shook it hard. "You did it, amigo. You actually did it." "We did it." Caleb looked at Ruth, at Toby, at the twins sleeping peacefully through everything. "All of us." Toby pushed through the crowd and threw his arms around Caleb's waist. "Is it over, Pa? Is it really over?" Caleb held him tight. "Yeah, son. It's really over." Judge Wilson approached them. Her stern face had softened. "Mr. Hartwell, there's still the matter of the Dawson estate to settle." "What do you mean?" "The foreclosure auction was scheduled for next month. With Blackwood under arrest and Judge Hale removed from office, the proceedings are void." She paused. "The Dawson Ranch belongs to the children, legally and properly." Toby looked up at Caleb. "We get to go home. You get to go home." Judge Wilson smiled. "All of you." Ruth came over the twins, stirring in her arms. "What about the gold? The vein under the property?" "That belongs to the children too." The judge's eyes twinkled. "I believe the survey estimated its value at $2 million. When young Tobias comes of age, he'll be one of the wealthiest men in Montana Territory." Toby's mouth fell open. "I don't care about the gold." "No." Judge Wilson looked at him curiously. "What do you care about?" The boy glanced at Caleb, at Ruth, at his brother and sister. "I care about my family, that's all." The judge nodded slowly. "Then you're already richer than most men will ever be." That night they gathered at Miguel's ranch one last time. The ranchers who'd fought beside them, the families who'd lost so much, the allies who'd risked everything. They shared food and whiskey, and stories, celebrating a victory none of them had believed possible. Caleb sat apart from the others watching the fire. Ruth found him there. "You're quiet." "Just thinking." "About what?" "About everything that's happened. Everything that's going to happen." He looked at her. "About you." Ruth sat beside him. "What about me?" "You saved us, Ruth. Without your help, without your evidence, Blackwood would have won. You would have found another way. Maybe. Maybe not." He paused. "But I don't want to find out." She raised an eyebrow. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying..." He took a breath. "I'm saying I've been alone for 9 years. I convinced myself I deserved it. That after losing my wife and daughter, I didn't have the right to be happy again. And now I have 3 children who need a mother, a ranch that needs rebuilding, a life that needs living." He reached for her hand. "And I have a woman who showed me that maybe I deserve a second chance after all." Ruth's eyes glistened. "Caleb Hartwell, if you're trying to propose to me, you're doing a terrible job." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Ruth Whitfield, will you marry me? Will you help me raise these children and rebuild our lives and grow old together?" She was quiet for a long moment. "My husband died 7 years ago. I thought I'd never love anyone again." She squeezed his hand. "Then you showed up with 3 orphans and a death wish and a heart bigger than the whole Montana Territory. Is that a yes?" "It's a yes, you impossible man." She kissed him. "It's absolutely a yes." Toby appeared in the doorway. "Pa, Miss Ruth." Caleb wiped his eyes quickly. "What is it, son?" The twins woke up. "Grace is asking for you." The boy hesitated. "Is everything okay?" Ruth stood smoothing her dress. "Everything is perfect, Tobias. More than perfect." "What does that mean?" Caleb rose, put his arm around Ruth. "It means you're getting a new mother, if that's all right with you." Toby's face went through a dozen emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, confusion, hope, joy. Really? Really? The boy launched himself at them, wrapping his arms around both of them. I've been hoping so hard. Ruth stroked his hair. So have I, sweetheart, so have I. They walked inside together, father, mother, son. The twins were awake now, Grace babbling happily, Henry clapping his hands. Miguel raised his glass when he saw them. Something you want to share, amigo? Caleb looked at Ruth, at Toby, at the children who'd changed everything. We're getting married. The room exploded with cheers. People rushed forward to congratulate them. Backs were slapped, hands were shaken, tears were shed. And through it all, Caleb held tight to his family. His family. After 9 years of darkness, after losing everything he'd ever loved, he had a family again. Not by blood, not by law, by choice, by courage, by the grace of a boy who'd walked through hell to find him. Later that night, when the celebration had quieted and the children were asleep, Caleb stepped outside alone. The stars were brilliant, scattered across the Montana sky, like diamonds on black velvet. He thought about his wife, buried in that Chicago cemetery. About Sarah, tiny and perfect, taken before she'd ever had a chance to live. I'll never forget you, he whispered. Either of you. But I have to move forward now. I have to be there for them. The wind stirred soft and cold, and Caleb could have sworn just for a moment that he felt something brush against his cheek. Light as a kiss, gentle as a goodbye. When he went back inside, Ruth was waiting. Everything all right? He pulled her close. Everything is exactly right. And for the first time in 9 years, Caleb Hartwell believed it. The wedding took place on the first day of spring. Reverend Crane performed the ceremony in the same church where he'd married Michael and Sarah Dawson 12 years before. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. We gather today, the Reverend said, to celebrate not just a union between two people, but the birth of a family. Caleb stood at the altar in his best suit, the one he hadn't worn since Chicago. Ruth walked toward him in a simple blue dress, her gray hair pinned up with wildflowers Toby had picked that morning. The twins sat in the front row with Miguel's wife. Grace was clapping her hands. Henry was trying to eat his shoe. And Toby stood beside Caleb as his best man. Do you, Caleb James Hartwell, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. And do you, Ruth Marie Whitfield, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. Her voice cracked. Lord help me, I do. Laughter rippled through the church. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Reverend Crane smiled. You may kiss your bride. Caleb pulled Ruth close and kissed her. The church erupted in cheers. When they broke apart, Toby was grinning. Does this mean I can call her Ma now? Ruth knelt down, took his face in her hands. You can call me anything you want, sweetheart, as long as you call me yours. The boy threw his arms around her neck. Ma, I like that. Caleb gathered them both in his arms, his wife, his son, his heart so full it hurt. The reception lasted until midnight. Every rancher in the territory came. Even Sheriff Webb showed up sheepish and apologetic. I should have done more, he said to Caleb. Should have stood up sooner. You're here now. That's what matters. Is it enough? Caleb looked at Ruth dancing with Toby at the twins being passed from arm to arm by doting neighbors. Yeah, Jonas, it's enough. They moved into the Dawson Ranch the following week. The house needed work. The barn was burned, the fences broken, the fields overgrown. But the bones were good, and the land was theirs. Caleb stood on the porch that first morning watching the sun rise over the mountains. Ruth came up behind him, slipped her arms around his waist. What are you thinking? I'm thinking this is the first place I've felt at home since Chicago. It's not much to look at right now. No. He turned, kissed her forehead. But it will be. The rebuilding took months. Ranchers came from across the territory to help. Miguel brought 20 men and enough lumber to build 2 barns. The Chen family contributed livestock. Pete Garrison, who'd lost his own wife to railroad violence, spent 3 weeks teaching Toby the finer points of cattle ranching. "You've got your father's instincts," the old man told the boy. He'd be proud. Toby didn't answer. But that night, Caleb found him sitting by the creek crying. "Son, I'm fine, Pa." "No, you're not." Caleb sat beside him. "What's wrong?" I miss them." Toby's voice broke. "Mama and Papa, I thought it would get easier, but sometimes it still hurts so much." Caleb pulled him close. "It's supposed to hurt. That's how you know you loved them." "Does it ever stop?" "No, but it changes." He paused. "I lost my wife and daughter 9 years ago. I thought I'd never feel anything again. Then you came along, and Grace and Henry and Ruth." He squeezed the boy's shoulder. "The pain doesn't go away. But you find room for other things too. Joy. Hope. Love. Is that why you helped us? Because you knew what it felt like? Partly. But mostly because your father trusted me. And because the moment I saw you at that gate pulling your brother and sister through the snow, I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were mine. That I was supposed to find you." Toby was quiet for a long moment. "Pa, yeah. I think Mama and Papa sent me to you. I think they knew you'd save us." Caleb's throat tightened. "Maybe they did. I'm glad." The boy leaned against him. "I'm so glad." Summer came hot and golden. The twins turned 2. Grace could say 20 words now, and her favorite was "Papa," which she shouted every time Caleb walked through the door. Henry was quieter, but he followed Toby everywhere, copying his every move. "You've got a shadow," Ruth teased one morning. Toby grinned. "I don't mind." The Dawson Ranch thrived. The new barn stood strong. The cattle were healthy. The gold vein remained untouched, waiting for Toby's decision when he came of age. "What do you think you'll do with it?" Caleb asked one evening. Toby shrugged. "I've been thinking about that. And I want to build a school. A real one where kids can learn reading and writing and math, but also law and ranching and how to protect themselves." "That's a big dream." "Papa always said dream big or don't dream at all." The boy paused. "And I want to call it the Dawson School, so people remember them." Caleb felt his eyes sting. "I think that's exactly right." The news came in August. Ruth was the first to hear it through the telegraph lines she still monitored. "Blackwood's dead." Caleb looked up from the fence he was mending. "What?" "Consumption. He died in prison last night." Her face was unreadable. "They're asking if we want to claim the body." Caleb set down his hammer. "What for?" "Burial, I suppose. He doesn't have any family left." Caleb thought about Marcus Blackwood, about the man who'd murdered Michael and Sarah Dawson, who'd terrorized an entire territory, who'd burned and stolen and destroyed. And he thought about what Reverend Crane had told him once. Every villain is the hero of his own story. "Bring him here." Ruth stared at him. "What?" "Bring him here. We'll bury him on the ridge next to the Dawsons." "Caleb, he killed them." "I know." He looked at her. "But his father was killed by the railroad too. He lost everything just like Toby did. The only difference is the choice he made afterward. And that makes it okay." "No, nothing makes it okay." Caleb paused. "But maybe if someone had shown him mercy when he was young, he would have turned out differently. Maybe if someone had seen the boy behind the monster, he wouldn't have become one." Ruth was quiet for a long time. "You're a better man than me, Caleb Hartwell." "I'm not better. I'm just tired of hate." He took her hand. "Toby's going to inherit a fortune. He's going to have power and influence and every reason to become like Blackwood. I want him to learn a different lesson. What lesson? That mercy isn't weakness. That forgiveness isn't surrender. That the measure of a man isn't how he treats his enemies when he's losing, but how he treats them when he's won. They buried Blackwood on a cool September morning. Only the family attended. Caleb, Ruth, Toby, and the twins. Reverend Crane said a few words. Nothing elaborate, just a prayer for a troubled soul. Toby stood at the graveside, his face unreadable. "Are you okay, son?" "I don't know." The boy stared at the fresh dirt. "I wanted him dead for so long. I dreamed about it, about making him pay for what he did. And now I just feel empty." Toby looked up at Caleb. "Is that wrong?" "No, that's human. I thought I'd feel happy, satisfied, but I don't. Revenge never satisfies." Caleb put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "It promises to fill the hole, but it just makes it bigger." "Then what does fill it?" Caleb looked at Ruth at the twins playing in the grass nearby at the ranch spreading out around them. This. Family. Love. Building something instead of destroying something. Toby was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad we buried him here." "You are?" "Yeah." The boy's voice was steady. "Now I can come visit Mama and Papa, and I'll see his grave too. And I'll remember." "Remember what?" "That I had a choice, same as him." Toby met his eyes. "And I chose different." 5 years passed. Toby grew tall and strong. At 15, he could break ice ride fence and manage cattle as well as any man in the territory. But he also read voraciously studied law by candlelight and helped Ruth teach younger children at the makeshift school they'd started in the barn. Grace and Henry were 7 now, bright and curious, and utterly devoted to their older brother. Grace had Ruth's practical nature. Henry had Michael Dawson's quiet strength. The gold vein remained untouched. "You're old enough to make the decision now," Caleb told Toby one evening. "The money's yours." "I know. What are you thinking?" Toby pulled out a piece of paper, handed it to Caleb. It was a drawing. Architectural plans for a building. A school 2 stories tall with a library and a courtroom and dormitories for students who couldn't afford to live elsewhere. "The Dawson School of Law and Agriculture," Toby said, "where kids can learn to feed themselves and protect themselves, where they can become ranchers or lawyers or both." Caleb studied the plans. "This is ambitious. The gold's worth $3 million now. The vein went deeper than anyone thought." Toby's eyes burned with purpose. "I don't want to be rich, Pa. I want to be useful." "Your father would be proud." "I hope so." The boy paused. "I want you and Ma to run it with me. Not forever, just until I'm ready to take over." "Me. You were a lawyer once. A good one." "That was a long time ago." "So?" Toby grinned. "You taught me that it's never too late for a second chance." Caleb laughed. "Using my own words against me." "Learned from the best." Ruth came in wiping flour from her hands. "What's all this? Our son wants to change the world. Is that all?" She looked at the plans, then at Toby. "Well, I suppose someone has to." The Dawson School opened the following spring. 50 students enrolled in the first year. They came from ranches and mining camps and railroad towns, children of families who'd never had access to education before. Toby taught the law classes. Ruth taught reading and writing. Caleb taught practical skills, ranching negotiation, how to read a contract. And every day before classes started, they gathered in front of a bronze plaque mounted by the entrance. "In memory of Michael and Sarah Dawson, who gave their lives for their children and whose legacy lives on." "Tell me the story again," Grace asked one morning. She was 12 now, sharp as a tack and twice as stubborn. What story? The blizzard story, how Toby found Pa. Toby smiled. It wasn't me who found him, it was Mama and Papa. What do you mean? They sent me to his gate. They knew he'd help. Toby looked at Caleb, at Ruth, at his brother and sister. They knew he'd save us. But how did they know? Because Papa met him once a long time ago, and he never forgot. Toby paused. That's the thing about kindness, Grace. It comes back around. Maybe not right away, maybe not how you expect, but it comes back. Grace was quiet for a moment. Is that why we buried Mr. Blackwood here? Because of kindness? Partly. What's the other part? So we remember. Toby's voice was soft. Remember that everyone has a choice. That the world breaks everyone, but some people get stronger at the broken places. Papa said that, no, a writer named Hemingway will say it about 40 years from now. Toby grinned. But I read ahead. Grace rolled her eyes. You're weird. And you love me anyway. Unfortunately. 10 years later, Tobias Dawson stood before a packed courtroom. He was 25 now, a lawyer with a reputation for defending the defenseless. The case before him was familiar, a railroad company trying to steal land from a small rancher. History repeating itself. But this time, the outcome would be different. Your Honor, Toby said, his voice ringing clear. My client has lived on this land for 30 years. He raised his children here, buried his wife here, poured his blood and sweat into every acre. He paused, looked at the jury. The railroad says they have a legal right to take it. They have documents. They have lawyers. They have power. Another pause. But my client has something more. He has truth. He has justice. And he has a community that refuses to let him stand alone. The courtroom doors opened. Caleb walked in, Ruth beside him, Grace and Henry behind them, and behind them, 50 more people, ranchers, farmers, merchants. The students Toby had taught, the families he'd helped. They filled the courtroom to overflowing. These people aren't here as witnesses, Toby continued. They're here to remind this court that justice isn't just about laws and procedures. It's about people. It's about what we owe each other as human beings. He turned to face the railroad's attorney. My father was murdered by a railroad man who thought he was above the law. My mother died trying to protect her children. I was 9 years old when I dragged my brother and sister through a blizzard to find the one man who could help us. His voice caught. I know what it feels like to lose everything, and I know what it feels like to find everything again. He looked at Caleb. Because one man decided to do the right thing, even when it cost him everything he had. The courtroom was silent. Your Honor, I'm asking this court to remember that. To remember that behind every legal document there's a human story. And this story deserves a better ending. He sat down. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. We find in favor of the defendant. The courtroom erupted. Caleb pushed through the crowd to reach his son. He pulled Toby into an embrace so fierce it drove the breath from both of them. You did it. We did it. Toby pulled back, his eyes wet. All of us. Ruth reached them, tears streaming down her face. Your parents would be so proud. I know. Toby looked toward the ceiling as if he could see through it to somewhere beyond. I hope they're watching. They are. Caleb's voice was rough. I'm sure of it. Grace and Henry crowded in, and suddenly they were all embracing, laughing and crying and holding each other. A family. Forged not by blood, but by choice. Not by law, but by love. Not by circumstance, but by the courage to begin again. That night, they gathered on the porch of the Dawson Ranch. Caleb sat in his rocking chair, Ruth beside him. Toby leaned against the railing. Grace and Henry sprawled on the steps, watching fireflies dance in the summer darkness. Tell me something, Pa. Toby's voice was soft. What's that? Do you ever regret it? Taking us in all the trouble it caused? Caleb was quiet for a long moment. I was dead for 9 years, he finally said. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. I'd lost my wife, my daughter, my purpose. I came to this territory to disappear. He looked at Ruth, at the children at the ranch spreading out around them. Then you showed up at my gate, half frozen, barely alive, dragging your brother and sister on a sled you'd built yourself. His voice cracked. And something inside me that I thought was gone forever woke up. What was it? Hope. Caleb reached over, took Ruth's hand. You gave me back my hope, Toby. You gave me back my life. The boy was quiet. I used to think you saved us, he said finally. But maybe we saved each other. Maybe we did. The fireflies danced. The stars wheeled overhead. And on a porch in Montana Territory, a family sat together in the darkness, rich beyond measure in all the ways that mattered. Not in gold, not in land, but in love, in courage, in the unbreakable bonds forged through suffering and strengthened by grace. Caleb looked at his wife, at his children, at the life he'd built from the ashes of everything he'd lost, and he understood finally the truth that Michael Dawson had died to protect. That family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when the world falls apart. It's about who stays when staying is hard. It's about choosing each other over and over again through fire and ice and everything in between. Ruth squeezed his hand. What are you thinking? Caleb smiled. I'm thinking I'm the luckiest man in Montana. Just Montana. In the whole damn world. She laughed, and the sound of it, warm and real and full of joy, was the sweetest music he'd ever heard. Above them the stars burned bright and eternal. And somewhere, somehow, Caleb knew that Michael and Sarah Dawson were smiling. Their children were safe, their legacy lived on, and love, stubborn, fierce, unbreakable love, had won.